Hey you guys, happy Saturday guys. You guys will probably get this video in a few days. So before we get into this video guys, just bear with me because I'm just kind of getting off the road. So I'm in relaxation mode now. So basically guys, how this video is going to work, I'm going to give you guys the books of the Old Testament and the books of the New Testament. Then I'm just going to give you the introduction and outline of contents for all 66 books of the Bible. I know the Lord dropped that on me a couple days ago to do, but just a quick disclaimer, we have so many Bible study videos and teachings. So a lot of these we've read the books, we've read the chapters, we've done Bible study readings on them in nuggets and breakdowns, and we've read the introduction and outline of contents. If you're used to this channel and the Bible studies, you know that, let's say for example, we were getting ready to read the book of Joshua. We will read the introduction and outline of contents, then we're going to read Joshua all the way through. So we're going to read chapter 1 and we'll talk about the nuggets or what happened in chapter 1 or just different downloads and things, and share thoughts and ideas and stuff like that, and we'll read it all the way through. So that's how it'll be. So we have a lot of the Bible studies on playlists with the introduction and outline and the straight through readings, but God was showing me this in a way that will help people that may not have time to go through all those playlists or go through all the videos. This is for you to pretty much help you study your Bible, or maybe it may be a book that you didn't read, because I haven't read all the books yet. We haven't read all the books in the Bible together. We've done a lot of Bible studies on most of them, but we haven't read all. So there are some things that I haven't read yet either. So this is a way to kind of help to let you know what each book is talking about. It's going to help me too, but to help you know what each book is talking about, like the introduction outline. I'm not going to go through each chapter and tell you the title, because some of them are short and some of them are long. I was going to do that for the shorter ones, but he doesn't want me to do that. He's like, just focus on the intro and outline, because it'll kind of give you a gist to say, let's say you say, okay, next week or this week or next month, I want to start reading this because of that sounded interesting to me, or this sound like something I want to learn more about. Or maybe you're in a certain season and maybe that character in the Bible or that book in the Bible related to you, or God is highlighting that to you. So it'll just be easier for you, so you can know at least, okay, the book of Revelation talks about this, or the book of Hosea talks about this. You'll know. I know many of you know, but for some reason he did put this on me to do, and it's not going to be done in one video because it's 66 books. So we got to go, I don't know how many parts. I just know I'm being obedient to record. So I pray it bless whoever I'm doing it for. And we're going to start with the books first. So in the front, write the contents, guys. And God bless us. In Jesus' name, amen. So in the front, guys, let's start with the books of the Old Testament. So there's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. There's Ruth. There's 1st and 2nd Samuel. There's 1st and 2nd Kings. There's Chronicles. There's 1st and 2nd Chronicles. There's Ezra. There's Nehemiah. If I'm going too fast, you can always pause or just go over our playlist. We literally have hundreds of them, guys. I try to put them in playlists to organize them for you guys over the years. And if you go on each playlist, it'll tell you what each chapter talks about. I put the date, the title, what we read about, either in the description box. It's listed in the title description box, or it's referenced in the video. And on most of those playlists, like if it's Corinthians, if it's 1 Corinthians, it'll say 1 Corinthians, Bible study 1 Corinthians. It'll give you what each chapter talks about. And it'll say we discussed the intro and outline of contents. So, and then you have the video where we're actually reading it. So that's another easy way that I could say. But if I'm going too fast, you can pause it or just go to them playlists, because it's so much to cover. So for sake of time, I just want to continue on. So, okay, it's 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, there's Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, some people say Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. In the Old Testament is talking more about like covenants, laws, rules, regulations. You're dealing with major, minor prophets. Like they say, the Old Testament is concealed and the New Testament is revealed. So you cannot have the Bible without the Old Testament, but you also can't have it without the New Testament. If you will, it's like a type and shadow of one another, and it has so many different symbolisms in there where they parallel off one another, if that makes sense. So you can't just say, oh, I'm just strictly new. No, the old helped to get it there or to reveal and open it up. And then you can't say, oh, I'm just strictly old, because then you're going to miss what's happening in the new. So it's like they converge. So we need them both. So that's what you're dealing with in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, you're dealing with more of like the Gospels of Jesus Christ. You're dealing with more of Christ. Christ was also mentioned a lot as Messiah in the Old Testament. But in the New Testament, you're seeing his life here on the earth. You're seeing what's happening, like what will be happening in the end times. You're seeing the apostles. You're seeing the power of the Holy Spirit. You're seeing the power of Christ in a greater capacity. And you're seeing throughout the Bible, we see different characteristics and attributes of God. Like in the Old Testament, he's more of like a judge, a righteous judge, covenant keeper, protector, vindicator. And throughout the New Testament, you see that also. You see that a lot also, but you also see his love. You also see him as Father. You also see him in different ways, and it's more than that, but for sake of time I'm gonna continue. So the New Testament, you're dealing with more of the disciples, the apostleship, apostles of Christ. You're dealing more of like the life of Christ, him on the earth, the gospel being spread throughout the world. You're dealing more with, even though it was in that biblical time and it was older, it was also for the modern time too, both old and new, So, I hope that makes sense. So that's the Old Testament. Now the New Testament. And of course it talks about more things than that, guys. I can't give y'all all of it in like this condensed video. Like this, the whole Bible. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm sure you guys get the gist of what I'm talking about, so let's continue. But the New Testament consists of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? You deal with the synoptic gospels. We talked about that multiple times, so I'm going to continue on. Acts, it deals with Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st Thessalonians, 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, because these were letters to the churches. Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st, 2nd and 3rd John, Jude, and the book of Revelation. And like a lot of these were letters. So you have the synoptic gospels, then you have letters. The Galatians were to the church of Galatia, so they were to the Galatians. The Corinthians letter was to the church of Corinth. Romans was to the church of Rome. Ephesians was to the church of Ephesus. Philippians was to the church of Philippi. Colossians was to the church of Colossus. Thessalonians was to the church of, I believe that's Thessalonica. Timothy was Timothy, he was under Paul, Apostle Paul. Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter was also Apostle of Christ. You see a lot also of the writings of Apostle Paul and just the different disciples. Like you see John, you see Luke, you see Matthew, you see Mark. Book of Acts, powerful, this whole Bible. Peter, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, those are all letters. Jude, Revelation, and then there's different churches. We did a Revelation series, and that's what I was telling you guys in the other previous video. I don't think it was this one, not this one. It wasn't the one before this one, it was the one before that one. So the two prior previous videos, I was telling you guys we're going to revisit the book of Revelation again sometime this year. I'm not sure when, because for April our theme is different. I'm doing my best to be obedient with the channel and keep up the videos, y'all, but we're going to be in a whole different theme, and we coming from a devotional book. So we'll be in that devotional book, and I'll upload also as he lead with that. But different letters and different things with this is they're talking to different audiences and they're addressing different things, but it's important for all of us, right? So that's the breakdown of the contents of the Old and New Testament. And like I said, we have the videos and playlists, so if you want to go over them, you can, because I'm gonna leave them up, and then alphabetical order of the books of the Bible, I'm not going to do that. You know, if you would like that list, let me know and I'll email it to you. But I'm not going to go over in this video because I just pretty much went over them with you guys and just broke them up in the Old and New Testament. Okay, so now guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start in the Old Testament. We're going to start with Genesis first. I'm going to do them in order. Okay, so and then I'll just do part 1, part 2. I don't think I'm leaving much in the description box because I don't want to get confused. I don't want to confuse no one because there's a lot of information. So I'm just going to do like part 1, part 2, part 3, however many parts it is, I don't know. So we just doing the introduction and outline. Okay guys, so for Genesis, the book of Genesis is the first chapter in the Bible, right? Not the first chapter in the first book. Okay, so the word Genesis means beginnings. The book of Genesis is about many beginnings. The beginning of the universe, the beginning of man and woman, the beginning of human sin, the beginning of God's promises and plans for salvation, and the beginning of a special relationship between Abraham and God. Genesis tells us about God's special people and his plan for their lives. Some of these people are Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, and his brothers. Genesis is the first book in what is called the I always pronounce this wrong. Hold on, guys. The Pentateuch. It's Pentateuch, a word that means 5 books. It includes the first 5 books of the Bible. These books are also shown as the books of the law because they contain God's instructions and laws for the people of Israel. Genesis is included because it tells the history of how Israel became God's special people. These 5 books were most likely written by Moses. Actually, I'm going to just release this video probably today, Saturday. I don't know. I'm probably just going to release it the day the Lord saying. I said I'm coming back Monday, but when he tell me to, okay. So, okay, these 5 books, hold on. Okay, these books are also known as the books of the law because they contain God's instructions and laws for the people of Israel. Genesis is included because it tells the history of how Israel became God's special people. These 5 books were most likely written by Moses, except for the last chapter of Deuteronomy, which tells about Moses' death. Okay, so that's the introduction for Genesis and the outline of contents. So chapters like 1 through 2 is the universe, the earth, and man. Chapters 3 through 5 says man's fall and the results of sin. And we do have a Genesis series. The ones I know we have a series on, I'll just say we have a series because it'll be on the playlist for you guys. So that's chapters 3 through 5 is man's fall and the results of sin. Chapters 6 through 9 is the story of Noah. And of course it talks about more things than that. But you know you just have to read it or look through or do audio Bible. That's 6 through 9. 10 through 11 is the scattering of the human race. 12 through 25 is the life of Abraham. And of course, like as you read it, it's going to give you, way more details. It's just an outline of contents. And Isaac and his family. So that's 12 through 25, the life of Abraham. 25 through 26 talks about Isaac and his family, which Isaac is Abraham's son. Jacob and his sons. Jacob is Isaac's son. So Abraham is his grandfather. So it talks about him and his sons, which he had 12, which is the 12 tribes of Israel, because God changed his name from Jacob to Israel, right? So Jacob and his sons is 27, chapters 27 through 37. And then the life of Joseph is 37 through 50. But it also talks more than just the life of Joseph through them chapters, but that's like the highlight of it. So guys, that's Genesis. And it has, like 50 chapters. So that's Genesis. So now let's move on to Exodus, which is the second book. Okay, so this is book 2, Exodus. Now let's go to the introduction. Exodus means exit or departure. The title of this book comes from one of the greatest miracles of God's care for his people in the Old Testament, the Israelites being freed from slavery and leaving Egypt. The book of Exodus continues the story of God's people, now called Israelites. The story of the Israelites began with Abraham in the book of Genesis, which Genesis is the one before this, right? From Moses' birth, God chose him for a special task to lead the Israelites out of Egypt into the land God had promised them, Canaan. Moses is the main character and author of this book. And we also have an Exodus series. Although he was weak in his own strength, God made him strong with his power and encouragement. This says chapter 7 verses 6 through 11. God showed his power to the Israelites and the Egyptians, because the Egyptians was the ones who was oppressing them, like Pharaoh, right? And the Egyptians in the 10 plagues. And that's like, it says chapter 7 verse 14 through chapter 11 through verse 10. The last plague made it possible for the Israelites to leave Egypt. Before leaving Egypt, they celebrated the Passover, which is in chapter 12. And that's like a really big deal, like the Passover and like the different feasts and things they have. So, okay, the Israelites began their journey. That doesn't say that, but as we're going along, I'm just sharing what's coming to me, guys. Okay. The Israelites began their journey protected and guided by God in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. With Moses leading them, they crossed the Red Sea, which is also the Sea of Reeds, and settled in the desert at the foot of Mount Sinai for about 1 year. Here, God set up his covenant with the Israelites by giving them the laws for living and worshiping. The covenant between God and Israel began a relationship in which Israel was identified as God's holy nation. God gave his people the 10 commandments, priests, and a tabernacle to help them live lives that showed they were truly God's people. So to outline the contents, this chapter has, this book have like 40 chapters. So to outline the contents, chapters 1 through 4, it talks about Moses, God's leader, and it talks about more than that also. But these just the outline. Chapters 5 through 13 is the contest with Pharaoh, because he did not want to let them go. But like God said, he was going to harden their heart, harden his heart so that he can gain glory through Pharaoh. Okay, so chapters 13 through 19 is from Egypt to Mount Sinai. Chapters 19 through 24 is God's covenant and laws. And chapter 25, that was chapters 19 to 24. And then chapters 24 continue on from verse 9 to chapter 40 is the tabernacle for worship. So that's Exodus, guys. That's the second one. The next one, which is the third book, is Leviticus, you guys. And let's go with the introduction and outline the contents. Leviticus means about the Levites. The Levites were God's priests, and the book of Leviticus contains many of the rules they needed to do their work. Rules for worshiping God, making sacrifices, and handling everyday problems concerning cleanliness. Like, it's so many rules and regulations and laws like in this book, right? Like in this particular book. Okay, and cleanliness. Although many of the rules were given only for the Israelites, the purpose of all the laws that were given was to help the Israelites worship and live as God's holy people. I believe we also have a Leviticus series. A key statement for the entire book is be holy because I am holy. And that's chapter, say, 11, 44 through 45. Outline the contents. It has 27 chapters. Chapters 1 through 7 is the laws and instructions for offerings. Chapters 8 through 10 is the atonement of Aaron and his sons as God's priests. Chapters 11 through 15 is rules for holy living. Chapter 16 talks about like the Day of Atonement. Chapter 17 through 22 talks about practical holiness. Chapters 23 through 25 talks about the Sabbath, feast, and seasons. So it gives you the Sabbath, feast, and seasons. And then 26 through 27 is conditions for God's blessings. And it talks about other things as well. So that's Leviticus. Next, guys, I believe we have a series on Numbers, or I know we've come from Numbers in most of Bible study. I don't remember if we've read all of it before, but I know we have read from some of the chapters before if we haven't done all of it. But Numbers, guys, is next after Leviticus. So this is number 4. So Numbers, the introduction. Numbers gets its name from the 2 accounts in chapters 1 and 26 of the numberings or countings of the people of Israel. Moses is the author of this book as well as the leader of the Israelites. The first part of the book tells about Israel's year while camped at the foot of Mount Sinai. The second part of the book tells of the journey of Israel from Mount Sinai to the east side of the Dead Sea. The third part of the book tells of the preparations for entering and conquering Canaan, which represented their promised land. Right, guys? Okay, so getting back to this. Throughout the 38 years of wandering in the desert, one thing became clear to Israel: God's constant care for them. He miraculously, yes he did, supplied the Israelites with manna, water, and quails for their 40 years in the desert. And you know, in the desert, nothing grows really out in the desert. So that was very miraculous for them to have food and bread and water and sustenance and be sustained, right, for 40 years in the desert. Okay, God loved and forgave his people continually, even though they rebelled against him and their leaders. So the outline of context for this has like 36 chapters. In chapters 1 through 10 is instructions for camping and marching. 10 through 21 is from Sinai to the plains of Moab. 22 to 25 it talks about Balaam, Balak, and Israel. We have read about that a lot before too. And then 26 to 36 is instructions for conquest and possession of the land of Canaan. Okay, guys, so that's Numbers. Now, after Numbers, guys, is Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy have like 34 chapters. And the introduction here, Deuteronomy means second law. After 40 years, the Israelites were about to enter the promised land of Canaan. But before they did, Moses wanted to remind them of their history, all that God had done for them, and the laws they had to continue to obey as God's chosen people. His first speech reminded the people of God's goodness to them throughout their journey and his giving them the land of Canaan. Moses' second speech was a summary of God's laws, including the 10 Commandments. Moses told the people to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength in order to continue to enjoy God's blessing. Moses also emphasized the fact that to keep their relationship right with God, the people had to teach their children to love the Lord and obey his commandments. Deuteronomy ends with the people of Israel being reminded of the covenant God had made with them. In 29, Joshua's appointment to be the new leader. In 31, and Moses' death in 34, like the chapters. It is generally accepted that Moses wrote Deuteronomy except for the chapter about his death. So outline the contents. And guys, if that TV is too loud, apologies guys, because they are in there watching TV. I'm just trying to be obedient to get the videos out. Okay, so chapters 1 through 4 is outline of context. Moses' first speech, which is talk about Israel's history. Chapters 4 through 11 is Moses' second speech, which is a review of the law. Chapters 12 through 26 is rules for daily living. Chapters 27 through 28 is the result of obedience and disobedience. Chapters 29 through 30 is the renewal of the covenant, and chapters 31 through 34 is Moses' blessing on Israel and his death. Okay, guys, so that's Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy. And then I told y'all, yeah, it has 34 chapters. And then after Deuteronomy, guys, is the book of Joshua. We have read from a lot of Joshua. I'm not sure if we read the whole thing, but I know we have read a lot from Joshua. So Joshua, this book has the name of its leading character as its title. Joshua is actually their leader. He was Moses' aide, Joshua's son of Nun. And this book is about him and his exploits for God and the people of God. And he was their leader and stuff like that. So this book has the name of its leading character as its title, Joshua. Joshua had been chosen and appointed by God just before Moses' death. The book of Joshua is the story of both Joshua and Israel as they, with God's help, conquered the promised land, Canaan. And this is a book of war. This is a book of wisdom. This is a book of literally leaning and depending on God. And they had so much victory when they physically went out to fight the enemies. Like, they got deceived with the Gibeonite deception and things, but other than that, God blessed them. Like, the sun still for him. He prayed. He was like, God, if the sun go down, just paraphrasing, he was like, we're going to lose. And God had already told them he was going to give it to them. But he was like, if the sun go down, like, he was like, I need you to make the sun stand still. And it says that, you know, the sun still on that day for him. God caused the sun to stand still until they defeated all their enemies. And it said that it has never been a day like that day before or after. So we know that God hears prayer, and God is a covenant keeping God. And when God say he giving you victory, is yours. Okay. So the book of Joshua is the story of both Joshua and Israel as they, with God's help, conquered the promised land, Canaan. The people miraculously crossed the Jordan River and conquered the town of Jericho. Then, with God's help again, they quickly took possession of all the main areas of Canaan. So they had to fight for it. They had to go through wars, but like, God let them possess what was for them, most of them. And as long as they obeyed him, he blessed them, you know, right? So before Joshua died, he reminded the people of God's covenant promises to them. He instructed the people to keep on loving and obeying God. Publicly, he spoke of his own willingness to serve God when he said, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And many people quote that That's where they're getting it from, Joshua 24:15, because he actually said that. Because he was saying that in front of the people, like, y'all have to choose this day whom y'all gonna serve. Like, I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you to hear. Like, I'm telling y'all have to make a choice. Choose you this day whom y'all gonna serve. But he was like, but as for me and mine, as for me and my house, we gonna serve the Lord. So like he was like, they have to make a choice. So outline the contents, it has like 24 chapters. Chapters 1 through 5 is preparation for possession of Canaan, because they had to get prepared, because a lot of them were going against kings and armies and people they had never really went against before, and they had to go like with the strategy that God had gave them in order to possess the land, because it was different strategies, different times, so that's chapters 1 through 5. The conquest of Canaan is chapters 6 through 12. The division of land by tribes, because you'll see a lot of that in this book, is chapters 13 through 21. And then farewell and death of Joshua is 22 through 24, which it talks about more than just his death, but again, that's just the content. So the next one, I think I'm going to stop in for this video. Then I'm going to continue to record. I don't know like how many it's going to be, but I just know God's going to bless me for being obedient, because I know it's going to bless somebody, So guys, the next one that we're going to close with for this video is Judges. And then I'll pick up, like I said, I'll put them in parts. So Judges, guys, introduction. This book tells of Israel's history for the period between the death of Joshua and the ministry of Samuel. This time period was known for its heroes, which was also called judges, right? Who ruled the tribes of Israel. So the events in Judges followed a certain pattern, and they have them in 5. So I'm going to tell you. 1, the Israelites lived in peace while serving and loving God. 2, the Israelites forgot God and worshiped idols. 3, God punished his people, he did, by sending a neighboring nation to fight and rule over them. 4, we do have a Judges series also. The Israelites turned to God and asked for forgiveness. 5, God forgave his people and saved them by sending a judge to help conquer their enemy. This pattern of events repeated itself many times during this time period in Israel's history. A total of 15 judges are listed for their leadership. The best known judges are Deborah, Gideon, and Samson. So outline the contents, chapters like 1 through 3, because it has like 21 chapters. Chapters 1 through 3 is conditions during the time of the judges. Chapters 3 through 16 is conquering nations and ruling judges. And idolatry and civil war is 17 through 21.